It's time for our midterm review, and to help us out with that, Laquan Jones, researcher extraordinaire. We all have a set of awards that we are handing out, so we'll gift the award, and then we'll talk about the player. So, Florio, what is the award you'd like to hand out first?
The biggest league winner so far, and to me, this is a no contest. It is Puka Nacua. Right now, I mean, Puka Nacua in fantasy leagues either win as like a last round draft pick or undrafted, and through 7 weeks, the only players with more non-quarterbacks with more fantasy points, Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, Stephon Diggs, and A.J. Brown. They were all either first-round picks or borderline first-round picks, and that is how good Puka Nacua has been.
I mean, it's got to be amazing for anybody who kind of lucked up on him on the waiver wire. You mentioned deeper leagues. He was drafted maybe in the late rounds. He has been amazing. And Laquan, you are our resident Rams fan here. And I know Sean McVay talked him up, but I don't think even the most optimistic Rams fan expected this from Puka.
No, I mean, like, even on draft day when we picked him up, I was looking at his clips. I'm like, he's very versatile. Like, he can be used all over this Rams offense. So I figured, like, hey, he'll eventually find his way on the field. But I did not expect him to explode with what he's doing right now. Like, I mean, it's amazing that he's going out there and producing the way he is.
It's sort of fitting, though, right? Because he plays next to Cooper Kupp, who's another guy from a smaller school that nobody had really heard of, who came out of nowhere and blossomed into the superstar almost right away in the LA Rams offense. All right, so Nacua, right now the biggest league winner. Laquan, what award would you like to hand out?
I'm going to give the Overachiever award to Travis Etienne, man. I mean, honestly, you were drafting him as a RB2, maybe even RB3. He was dropping in drafts, but, man, he's returning huge with RB1 numbers. I mean, he's a top 5 running back right now, averaging 19 fantasy points per game. I mean, what more could you ask for? I mean, over the summer, we were all hyped about this Tank Bigsby hype, but I was guilty of that as well, like cutting to some of these opportunities. But Travis Etienne is tied with Christian McCaffrey right now in touches, so you gotta love the return that you're getting back on him right now.
I mean, as of like a week or so ago, the only 2 players in the NFL that had 500 or more rushing yards and 5 or more rushing touchdowns were Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne. And Florio, maybe the biggest thing is that they're actually getting targets to him now. It's something we didn't see his first couple years in the NFL.
And it's something that we kept we want them to throw him the ball. We know he can be used as a pass catcher. And also the touchdowns. Like, remember the first month of the year, we were like, oh, Travis Etienne is great, but they're using Bigsby near the goal line. The touchdowns haven't been there. He's got like 6 in the last month or whatever it is.
Yeah, he has been legitimately a workhorse back in that Jacksonville offense. And Travis Etienne has given you huge value. Speaking of value, my best value pick for the first half of the season has been Sam Laporta, and this is a guy who got a lot of hype during the preseason, during training camp, and was getting drafted sort of later in drafts. He was going to be your tight end 2. Right now, he is the tight end 4 overall, has been amazing, and it comes at a position where we're looking for help anywhere we can find it. I mean, Laquan, look, we knew that the Lions offense was going to be good. We knew Amon-Ra St. Brown was going to get his. But I think, again, if you were optimistic about Sam Laporta, you didn't think he was going to become an every week starter the way he has.
Absolutely not, man. I mean, Jared Goff is targeting him as if he's his Tyler Higbee. You know, he's going to be using security blankets, but he's using him as a actual elite target. I mean, having Sam Laporta on the field for him, he has to feel a lot more comfortable if Amon-Ra is doubled, because Sam Laporta is going downfield making the big plays just like Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'm pretty sure he's happy Sam Laporta was drafted, and he's going to be there for a while.
Iowa Tight End University, just pumping out another one that we can love for fantasy football. All right, so while we love having Sam Laporta on our rosters, Florio, you got somebody that we maybe are a little bit frustrated with.
Yeah, my biggest disappointment so far, because there's still time for him to right the ship, unfortunately goes to a player that I was really high on this offseason, Calvin Ridley. And you see there, wide receiver 37 right now. I'm giving him a D. I am hopeful that he starts to turn his season around this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's in play as a start for there, but it's been so up and down getting to this point. I thought that he was going to be a fantasy wide receiver 1. Not even sure we could say that he's been the wide receiver 1. Well, I'm sure we cannot say it that he has not been the wide receiver 1 one on his own team thus far.
I mean, Laquan, we had week 1 when he had over 100 yards, had a touchdown. Yeah. We were all dancing a jig, figuring, all right, here comes the breakout, like Calvin Ridley is back. Since then, it's been the Christian Kirk show. I mean, any hope that things turn around in the second half?
I'm not quite sure. It's not looking good because you got Christian Kirk. He's kind of been Trevor Lawrence's alpha guy in that offense. And Calvin Ridley, like you said, week 1, we were celebrating, and then it's like, oh no, we suck again. Like, what's happening? Like, I really don't understand what's going on and how he's not really gelling into this offense. But hopefully he could bring it around. But right now, it's just not looking good.
It is not looking good for Calvin Ridley. We'll see what happens for him in week 8 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Meanwhile, you've got another guy who has broken our hearts so far this season.
Yeah, broken my heart is like an understatement, man. I mean, Damen Pierce, what is going on? He gets the dumpster fire award, man, because it's just been bad. Like, it just has not been good, man. 2.9 yards per carry, averaging less than 10 fantasy points per game. I mean, we know the talent is there, and we know Houston's O-line has been bad, but it's just been a complete dumpster fire. I mean, come on, man. Where's the guy that was advertised this summer of being more involved in the passing game? This dude has 9 catches. I mean, who do I send the email or the letter to say, hey, this is not what I bought? This is false advertisement. So it's just been bad. I wouldn't be mad if fantasy managers want to kick him off the roster.
I understand folks who are dropping Damen Pierce. I sort of share your pain too because I went heavy on him in drafts this season. Although, Flory, I'll say this. To start the second half of the season, he's got a choice matchup ahead of him. I mean, it feels like, you know, week 8 could be the first day of the rest of his fantasy life.
Hopefully.
Yeah, you saw on the RB boards, I have Damen Pierce as a start this week. Both of our disappointments, Ridley and Damen Pierce, it starts here. They're going to fix it.
All right, we're turning things around. Meanwhile, I'm giving you the We All Saw This Coming award, and this is a guy who's not on your start list this week. It is Naji Harris. Oof. Going into drafts this season, I think a lot of fantasy analysts, a lot of fantasy managers were very wary of drafting Naji Harris. You saw him falling in drafts. There was the concern that Jaylen Warren was going to take some opportunities away from him, and everything we were worried about has come to fruition. He is the RB 36 right now. He has the same number of fantasy points as Tyjae Spears, who was behind Derrick Henry and wasn't even playing early in the season. He's just slightly ahead of Chuba Hubbard. That's how bad things have been for Naji Harris. You heard Florio mention it early in the show that he's been outscored by Jaylen Warren in every single week but one. He only has 2 games with double-digit fantasy points. He's generally been around 5 to 6 points most weeks. And, I mean, Florio, at this point, like, what do you do? Because no one's going to trade you for him. Do you just drop Naji Harris now?
I think he gets too much volume where you can't drop him just in case of injuries or buys. But we always say, like, anchor on your fantasy lineup. Naji Harris is the definition of an anchor.
It's just an anchor around that lineup right now. All right, so let's come back around. Something a little bit more upbeat, Florio. You got something that we can all agree on right now.
The best player in the world award. You already know who I'm going to say. It's Tyreek Hill. Like, the scariest sight on an NFL football field is when Tyreek Hill throws up the peace sign at your defense. You just know it's a wrap then. A+++ grade. And you see there, 186.6 PPR points. Coming into week 8, no other player was within 15 fantasy points of him. And 15 is a good game for most players not named Tyreek Hill. Even with not having played this week, he has more fantasy points on the year than Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and all the Bucs who have played an extra game more than he has. He is the absolute best player in fantasy right now, and it's looking like if you don't have Tyreek Hill, you might not be able to win a championship.
I mean, it's wild. You talk about 15 points. He had 15 points in one game way back in week 2. If he came back with 15 points this week, you'd be like, what's wrong with Tyreek Hill?
Yep.
What happened? Where did it go wrong? Any other wide receiver, you're like, that's pretty good. Tyreek Hill gives you 15 points. You're like, ooh, he must have been sick or something. I have no idea what happened there. All right, Laquan, you've got an underdog story right now.
Yeah, you got to root for underdogs, man. Jacobi Meyers has always been a productive wide receiver, even dating back to his time in New England, which I'm not quite sure why they let him walk. But man, the best thing about Jacobi Meyers right now is that he's scoring touchdowns. Like, that's the best thing going on for him. He had trouble finding the end zone in New England. He's actually leading the Raiders right now in touchdowns. Like, every time Jacobi Meyers was scoring touchdowns, I was screaming in my living room like a psychopath, thinking you would think it was Puka Nacua or a Cooper Kupp like scoring touchdowns. But like, I just gotta root for the underdog. He's such a productive wide receiver. He's top 12 right now and averaging 17 fantasy points per game, and like, he has more targets than Devontae Adams in the last 3 games. Like, this is crazy to really talk about, and you're getting him so late in drafts, so you gotta root for the underdog here, man.
I mean, the Patriots had to move on from Jacobi Meyers so they could give targets to a washed Juju Smith-Schuster. It just makes perfect sense. He's also made Hunter Renfrow expendable. I mean, that guy, it's amazing. Like, you forget that he's on the roster because he's never on the field and never gets targets in the Raider offense anymore. Our last award of the show is the Goodwill Hunting Award. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Kyle Pitts, it's not your fault. He doesn't get a grade. He gets an incomplete because, look, it's not about you, Kyle. It's about your head coach, who apparently just fantasy football lives rent-free in Arthur Smith's brain, because every time somebody asks him about his player usage, he makes a reference to fantasy football. It's like, you know, Arthur, this is about your offense maybe not living up to its full potential because you want to force-feed Cordero Patterson touches. Nobody understands it. You've got a guy who's just an absolute freak of nature athletically in Kyle Pitts, yet can't consistently get opportunities. When we, as fantasy folks, say you should give Kyle Pitts the ball, it's not solely because we want our fantasy teams to succeed, but it's because it seems like it'd be the best reason for your offense to succeed. Flory, I mean, I know we do this every week on the NFL Fantasy Football Show. We do it here, right? But, like, I don't even know what to say anymore other than why? Why is this happening to us?
You know how Arthur Smith clearly has some disdain for fantasy managers? That's exactly how we feel about you, Arthur Smith.
Yes.
Like, and just remember, the internet always gets the last laugh. So we're gonna keep this all in our mind, and we'll see at the end of the year.
We've got the receipts. I mean, LQ, there's nothing that brings the fantasy community together like Arthur Smith. Like, we don't agree on anything. We all agree that we don't like the way Arthur Smith runs this offense.
Absolutely not. And, like, I don't even care for the Falcons in general. But when it comes to Kyle Pitts, he's a generational talent, and you're just keeping the Lamborghini in the garage, man. Just letting him out. Go on the road and hit 140, do whatever the case may be. But he needs the ball in his hands more times than Jonnu Smith, I'll tell you that.
I mean, it really is that meme of the sports car next to the beat up old house with the whack cardboard cover on it. That's exactly what Kyle Pitts is in the Falcons offense.